Sup, guys? It's Toad back with you as usual. Ooh, my mic feels a little bit louder today. I turned it up for Tower Gang last night, and maybe I'll leave it this way, and then I won't have to shout as much into the mic there, into the abyss. I want it to ruin my voice. We'll see how this goes, man. Let's see if my mic is actually working here because I keep testing it now. Yeah, it's working. All right, let's go. Yesterday, slight losing day, man. I mean, 1-1, what can you do? The bowl game looked like it was going to be the one of the two that wasn't going to get there early on. Dude, I don't know what we can do about these bowls anymore, man. And that was a situation where Western Kentucky, I mean, they had a bunch of players enter the transfer portal. Yes, a bunch of those guys did not play, but the main one was Veltkamp, their quarterback. Not only was in the transfer portal and saying he wasn't going to play, he was using the trip to visit Florida Atlantic. So visit a suitor, another team that he may be playing for next year. And he still played in the Boca Raton Bowl yesterday. Boca Raton. They're going to have to atone for misleading me like that, man. So I was like, oh, crap. Veltkamp is actually playing in this game, even though I think some of their players indeed did not play in this game. But I'm like, man, he's like the key to their offense. And it was looking like it probably wasn't going to get there early. I think Western Kentucky had a 14-7 lead going into the half, but luckily for me, they stalled out in the second half. It seemed like at least my handicap was right as far as which team still cared about the game more. And James Madison was able to get there, and it looked like they got that late touchdown to finally retake the lead by a touchdown, and then it looked like it was going to end as a push for me, but they got back into range and got a field goal to push it to 10 with less than 2 minutes left. I was like, yes, I'll take the cover here, baby. James Madison, first bowl win in program history. Congratulations to them. And it was without all the guys that were on that great team last year. But those guys are in the playoffs right now for the most part on Indiana. So they're doing all right, even though I think they're going to lose to Notre Dame, which I'm going to talk about that. I'll mention at the end of the show what I'm going to plan on doing here as far as my upcoming shows and schedule and whatever. And then, of course, I lost on Michigan in college basketball. It looked like I was going to go 2-0, man. I mean, Michigan had the lead for the majority of that game, and they just did not get there. I mean, they were winning by double digits in the final 10 minutes of the game. It was looking pretty good, pretty secure. And even down into the final minute, like 40 seconds left in the game, they were still up 3. So it's like, okay, just avoid giving up 3, maybe get fouled a couple times, hit your free throws. We'll get this. You just got to win by 2.5. No, I don't know what happened, but I think Oklahoma went 2 for 1 or something like that, and they scored 4 points. Michigan didn't score again, and Michigan lost the game outright. It's just insane, man. So a slight losing night for me. Let's talk about tonight's slate, man. I mean, we got a lot of sports in action, but I really don't have a lot to say about most of this. I mean, this college basketball slate is pretty bad. I mean, there are a lot of cupcake teams in action here. And other than that, it's like, do I even want to touch any of these games? I don't really. I mean, Oakland is coming off a step-up game over Michigan State, so you could argue that maybe fading them might make sense here at Cleveland State, but Oakland up from Pick'em to 1.5 or 1 with juice, maybe close to 1.5. So it looks like the money is actually coming in on the Oakland side. Their game against Michigan State, it was close with maybe like 15 minutes left, but then they just started falling apart. So it's not like they like took them to the wire or anything like that. So no thanks there. St. Mary's, I think, is actually in a bad spot, but they're up from 19.5 to 20.5. They're obviously the way better team over Merrimack, even though Merrimack is decent for the conference that they're in. Merrimack, the homeboys over here, but St. Mary's, they just lost a real close game to Boise State, coming off a win at Utah. So they've played multiple pretty difficult games in a row. And then they have Utah State up next in 3 days, which is another big game. Utah State, very good as well. So it is a spot where it looks like a sandwich spot where they might not have a full effort against Merrimack. And the one other thing it's going for you, if you do like taking the points with Merrimack here, is that St. Mary's plays a very slow pace. So it's going to be more difficult for a team that plays like that to get up and over a huge number like that. But this is a complete mismatch as well between them and Merrimack. So if St. Mary's shows up at all, which, I mean, I'm not sure if I expect that they will, but if they do, they probably won't have that difficult a time getting over that. So I'll stay away from that as well. And then UC Irvine is coming off their first loss of the season in a pretty big game against Oregon State. I mean, that's like a bigger conference team essentially that you're stepping up against to play. Irvine down from 3 to 2.5 on the road. So they are still favored on the road here, but this is multiple road games in a row now for UC Irvine, and they have to go further east than they have this year so far to Belmont, who play in Tennessee. So this line is, and I think this is at Belmont, this line moving down a little bit. So I do agree with the move in this one. I think Irvine, when you suffer that first loss, especially if it's a big step-up game, even though it wasn't that close a game, a lot of times it will hang you over into the next game. It'll like stop your winning momentum, and it's like the rails kind of come off a little bit. That could be what we see happen here. So I would lean to taking the points with Belmont in that one, even though UC Irvine is good and they are the better team. Not playing any of these games, though. Move over to NBA. We have a packed NBA slate, but this is one of those NBA days where I just don't really like it, man. I mean, you got a lot of the teams were on break for a couple of days because the NBA Cup was finishing, and the winner of the Cup, Milwaukee, is not playing today. So a lot of times, well, not a lot of times because we've only had this happen once before, but the team that wins the Cup, sometimes you want to look to, I think it might make sense to want to look to fade them in the next game. We do have the team that lost the Cup playing today in Oklahoma City, the Thunder, but I'm not sure that fading them is really that great of an idea. They're at Orlando. Orlando, very, very injured still without their top two players there, Banchero and Wagner. They're not coming back yet. So Oklahoma City is still the better team there. And the market looks like it's actually indicating on Oklahoma City. And Oklahoma City, I mean, they know that they kind of got embarrassed in that final. They really did not play a good game in that NBA Cup final. So they might actually be a little bit angry and in kind of a bounce back mode, really. They're up from 6 to 6.5, laying points on the road because of all the Magic injuries. Magic playing with a pretty thin roster. 69% of the cash on the Thunder, 61% of the tickets over on Orlando. Orlando, at the very least, is the more rested team, so they will have some time off here. And when teams have an extended break like this of a few days, you want to tend to look for teams that went into that break playing poorly to kind of bounce back a little bit, and that might be a spot that Orlando is in here. The problem is, like I said, thin roster, and the market looks like it's against it, so I'm not going to try to come in and play the Orlando Magic here. But in general, these teams today, if they went into that break on a losing streak, kind of like what I say with buys, that losing streak kind of helps them refocus and they try to fix some things. Whereas if a team went into that break on a winning streak, it could like disrupt their winning momentum because they don't really have anything to fix. So that might be more of an issue for those teams. So that's what to look out for today. I will be at the Boston Celtics game tonight as well against the Chicago Bulls. Hopefully my Celtics don't have one of those games where, I mean, they're a 14.5, 15-point favorite here. It looks like in that game, the market is actually against them with 71% of tickets on them, 54% of cash on the other side. I don't care if the Celtics cover, but they better just get in and get out with a win, man. But it could be one of those games where the Celtics really are just not paying total attention because they know that it's a very inferior opponent that they're playing. These are the types of games that are actually dangerous for the Celtics just because they don't show up focused. When you get a focused effort from the Celtics, you tend to want to bet on the Celtics. But in a game like this, I mean, this is a game where they might just completely overlook a pretty bad Bulls team. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. The Bulls certainly, I don't think they're as good as like even last year. Last year, I think they kind of snuck into the play-in games at the very end there. They had Caruso last year, which really improved their defense, and he's gone. I forget where he even is now. Is he on the Thunder? I don't even remember. I forget where he is, but Bulls really not very good this year. But again, the Celtics laying a lot of points and could overlook the Bulls here, but hopefully they just win for me there. Scott, what's up, man? Thanks for hanging out. Let me see. So yeah, I just figured I'd comment on that because I'm going to the game. Got to look at injuries too. I mean, New Orleans still has a lot of injuries they're dealing with. So I'll just point that out. Golden State at Memphis is one of the better games today. Memphis down from 4 to 2.5, 80% of tickets, 56% of cash. So it looks like the money is coming in on the side of the Warriors here, which I'm assuming this means the Warriors are getting a little bit healthier because they went into that time off. They had a few days off to kind of recollect themselves a little bit, although they went into that break with a pretty big game against Dallas, which they did lose. So they did go into that break on a losing streak, and they haven't been playing good basketball. So maybe that will help them a little bit. It's the start of a 2-game road trip, so it does look like it could be a focus spot for Golden State here. And I would assume that like Curry is probably going to be back in this game. I assume he's playing. He's not on the injury report, so it looks like we're going to get a pretty intact Warriors team here. Memphis, on the other hand, I mean, they also went into that break on a loss to the Lakers, which kind of broke up a big win streak they had. Memphis was playing real well for a while. And I think Morant is on the injury report right now, but he's day to day. I mean, I would probably expect him to play with this many days off. The question is, did that loss and then ensuing break kind of disrupt their winning momentum? Maybe. So I might agree with the market read in this one and look towards the Warriors side in that one. Just out. What's up, my man? Just out. That I think I asked this before. That means you're out of the closet now, right? You're newly publicly gay. Is that what we're talking about? Let's see. Clippers and Dallas I'll talk about because it's a bigger game. I want to get out of here quickly, but we'll see. Dallas, like I said, they went into the break off of a pretty big win over the Golden State Warriors. So I don't think the break is actually going to be that helpful to them. And they're actually returning home from a road trip that took them out to the East Coast and then up to Canada and then to the Midwest and then to the Pacific Coast. They were going all over the place. So they did have some days of rest in the middle of that road trip there, but they hadn't been home for a while, and then they finally got to come home. So the hope here is that maybe they were able to put get their home affairs in order in these days that they've had off, but it could be a distracted spot, man. Having that extended time off might kind of disrupt that momentum or any new momentum they might have from that win over Golden State. So this doesn't look like a good spot to me for Dallas here, returning home here. And it is a spot where they may overlook the Clippers a little bit. And I believe the Clippers lost to Dallas in the playoffs last year. Is that right? Like, was Dallas the team that eliminated the Clippers? I think that's right. So the Clippers are looking at playoff revenge here as well, because the Clippers haven't played them yet this year, and they're looking at Dallas, the team that eliminated them last year, and Dallas got to the Western Conference Finals too. So I expect a focused effort out of the Clippers in this game. So I was pretty close to wanting to play the Clippers. This is the closest I was to playing one of the NBA games. Say the Clippers broke up their loss streak by getting a win over a very bad Utah team, probably the worst team in the NBA, absolutely annihilating them. But I don't think that's going to make them overconfident or anything like that. They only have 2 days off. That broke up a loss streak that they had. So I don't think that having 2 days off is going to disrupt their momentum or whatever. And they're starting a road trip facing Dallas. So it's basically a double focus spot here. Well, triple, because it's Dallas is one of the best teams in your conference. They eliminated you last year. They're the team that ended your season, and you're starting a road trip. Looks like a lot of reasons for the Clippers to be focused here. And I know this is a very inconsistent Clippers teams. You don't know what you're going to get out of the Clippers. I do like the Clippers here. The problem is Luka is injured again. So Dallas, he played in their last game, in that game against, who was it against? Golden State, I think. Luka got injured and he is not playing. So this is actually an injured player theory game for Dallas. So Dallas, because Luka is out, they actually might have reason to step up their game in his absence. As I always say, the first game that you're missing that star player, you tend to get a pretty good effort out of that team. They do tend to step it up. So otherwise, I would be taking the points with the Clippers here, man. But that's the problem. I don't think I could fade the Mavs just because the line is a little bit less now. It's gone down from 7 to 4.5, which most of that adjustment is because of the Luka injury. 90% of the tickets and 80% of the cash on the Mavs, though. So the Mavs are still very public with the money moving against them. So I do still like the Clippers side in that one, though. That would be the only way I would look in that game if I was going to play it, but I'm not, just because of the Luka injury. Otherwise, I would be on it. And, knowing my luck, a lot of times when I pass on a game, the game winds up hitting. So what can you do? That's just the name of the game, man. I mean, if you're good at this, you're going to have opinions that you don't actually play, and a lot of them will be right. It's just the hope is the games I actually play are going to be right. I am playing one of the games in the NHL here, and I don't know that there are a lot of games that even make sense to talk about here. So I do like Seattle. This is not the game I'm playing, but I lean to Seattle on the road against Chicago. I mean, the odds makers are still telling you Chicago's not a very good team. They may have that little bit of spark with their new coach there, but I mean, they haven't been playing really that well, even with them. I mean, they just don't have the talent level. Seattle's up from -140 to -143, with Chicago actually getting the public action. 60% of tickets, 54% of the cash. So this looks like a rare spot where you have a home public underdog here. So it looks like the type of spot where you would definitely want to fade that team. So that, I mean, I agree with doing that. That is the way that I look here. I do like the Seattle side. Chicago, they just beat the Washington Capitals, man. And not only did they beat them, they came back from down 2-0 to beat them. And now they have to turn around and play again and finish this homestand where they're already 2-0. They do start a road trip after this. If they had a big game up next, it would be a sandwich spot, and I'd probably be all in on Seattle here. I mean, I do still like the Seattle side. Like I said, it's the only way I would look in this game. I do think it is still a letdown spot for Chicago here. Calgary, though, again, they're not like a great team, so probably not a team that's really going to draw Chicago's focus. But, I mean, I don't think Seattle is either. I mean, Seattle is below 500 here. Seattle, I think they're in a bounce back spot here. They're starting a road trip. They're coming off getting shut out by Ottawa here. I'm very tempted to actually throw in on this game, man, to throw the money down on this. I'm tempted. Should I do it? I mean, this is a bounce back spot. I mean, when you get shut out by anybody like that, and then you get to go out on the road, you get to forget about all your woes at home. Stop listening to the media. I mean, they've been outscored 8-1 combined in the last 2 games after they beat my Bruins. Starting, the road trip is going to be one of those spots where you tend to just get to forget about what they're saying about you at home. You get to start anew. You know what? I don't know what the line is here, but let's do it. I'm going to play it. I'm going to add one more NHL play here. So we'll have 2 NHL plays here. We'll call it Seattle minus 140 right now, and we'll see if I can get a better price on it. But we'll play the Seattle Kraken in this one. I'm not being selective enough today, man, probably. I don't know. And then we do have my Boston Bruins are at Edmonton, which I figured I'd talk about a couple of these games real quick, some of the bigger games. Edmonton up from minus 170 to minus 183, 88% of tickets, 98% of the cash. The money looks like it is coming in on Edmonton, but I'm not so sure about that, man, because Edmonton, I mean, they're coming off a big game, man. I mean, it was Stanley Cup final revenge against Florida, very high scoring game. And they played a string of big games in a row, man, against Tampa, Minnesota. They blew out Minnesota. They beat Vegas 6-3. And then they played this Florida game, huge game, looking for Stanley Cup final revenge, only losing the game by 1. And they do have a little bit of time off, but that halted their win streak, man. So that could maybe end their winning momentum here. And that was a big game against Florida. So I think that's the type of game that could hang you over into that next game. So I don't agree with the Edmonton side in this one. I don't really think I want to come in and try to play on my Boston Bruins either, but you're getting a big underdog price on the Bruins. The Bruins actually had a nice comeback against Calgary. Speaking of comebacks, they were down 3-1 in this game against Calgary, I think, and they tied it, sent it into overtime, and won in overtime. So now they're playing a 5th straight road game. And you might argue, well, they're going to be focused because it's Edmonton. It's a good team, and they're 2-2 on the road trip right now. So they want to complete a winning road trip here. I would agree with that. That's true. The question is, are they going to run out of steam here? Like, that's the problem with these end of road trip spots here, is that you might see fatigue starting to set in there. So I would also understand maybe potentially looking to an over in this game as well, even though the Bruins offense has been bad. They're up from the totals up from 6 juice to the over to a little bit more heavily juiced to the over, but I see 88% of tickets on the over and 60% of the cash on the under. So I'm not quite sure about that, but I could potentially see playing the game that way. And then Vancouver, Vegas actually might be the biggest game that we have on deck here. I don't know, but Vegas sitting at minus 158, 91% of tickets, 92% of the cash. Vegas definitely public in this game with the line not really moving. So that kind of tells you something, that if the public is pouring in trying to play Vegas here, it looks like maybe Vancouver might be the side to look at in this game. Vancouver, they're on a back-to-back, though, so I don't really like this. I mentioned, though, that I thought out of these 2 games they were playing, that the one that they would overlook more was Utah, but they played pretty tough, at least against Utah last night, and they lost 3-2 in overtime. So do I want to try to play a team on a back-to-back coming off an overtime game? I really do not. And it's a 3rd game in 4 days, all in different cities. So it is a tough scheduling spot for Vancouver. So I'm not going to try to do that. Vegas, on the other hand, they are not on a back-to-back at all. They are coming off a big win over Minnesota, though. They played a bunch of big games in a row against Dallas, Winnipeg, Edmonton, Minnesota. I mean, Vancouver's still a big game, but they're also returning home from a road trip. So it doesn't look like a great spot for Vegas either. And they do have extra time off here, but that extra time off can kind of add to some of the return home distractions sometimes. So I I don't like the spot for Vegas, even though they are the extra rested team there. I think it might be a situation where it's maybe a little bit too much rest there. So I'm going to stay away completely. And then Kings, Philadelphia. Kings down from -155 to -153, laying a pretty big road price there at Philadelphia. I mean, we know the Kings are the better team. Kings just kind of had a win streak stalled here with a loss to Pittsburgh. And now they're continuing a road trip. They're on a long road trip here, man. When they return home, I know it's against Edmonton, but they could be in a bad spot. Well, they do have a bunch of time off, so maybe not. They'll have the holiday break actually before that. So I don't know if that's really going to be a distracted spot or not. But back to this game, they did just play into overtime 2 days ago and lost to Pittsburgh. So does that mean they're going to be in a bounce back spot? I'm not entirely sure about that, man. And just like the Bruins, they're looking to split. Not split the road trip because the road trip's continuing, but they're looking to be back above 500 on the road trip. In Philadelphia, they're in a back-to-back. They played last night in a pretty high-scoring game against Detroit last night. That was a crazy game. It was on TNT last night. So Philadelphia is coming into this with no rest, actually returning home from Minnesota and Detroit. So the rest advantage is on the side of the Kings in this game. So that's just my thoughts there. And then my other play in the NHL before I switch over, I'm going to play the Nashville Predators, man. I'm going to play on the Nashville Sex Offenders here, the Predators. One of the most ridiculous team names, man. And this is against that Pittsburgh team I just mentioned. This is a line, man, where, I mean, the line just looks weird, man. You can actually get a better price right now than -140. It's down from -140 to -136, but it looks like Pittsburgh is a public road underdog in this one. 80% of the tickets on them, 64% of the cash on them. So both of these plays in hockey are going to be on anti-public favorites. It looks like at the very least here, even though the money line looks like it's moving against Nashville in this one for now. But man, I mean, look at this price. The odds makers are telling you something with this price here. I know Nashville's at home, but look at the records here. Pittsburgh's at 500 and Nashville is way below 500. So the public's going to have to look at this and think, well, wait a minute. You're giving me Sidney Crosby, whose team has the better record. They're an underdog. They're getting plus money here against a team with a way worse record, below 500, and you're giving me like an underdog price here. It almost looks way too easy to take Pittsburgh here, and I think that it is too easy. I do not like the Pittsburgh side in this one. I actually think this is kind of a sandwich for Pittsburgh because they're coming off multiple overtime games in a row. They returned home and they beat the LA Kings, who had been playing quite well. That was the return for Nedeljkovic in net after Jari had played a bunch of games in a row. I'm not sure that I trust either one of those goaltenders, to be honest. So they did that. Now they have to turn around and start a road trip. And I know that starting a road trip is usually a focus spot, but when you have 2 games in 3 days like this, and one of these teams is Nashville, who has a terrible record, and the other team is New Jersey, who is a top your same division. So that's a divisional matchup against the division leader, the New Jersey Devils, and then more divisional matchups after that against Philadelphia and the Islanders. Which of these teams are you going to be more focused on, man? Yeah, I think Pittsburgh might look past Nashville in a spot like this, man. Coming off a big overtime, like basically home upset win, I'm pretty sure, against a Kings team that's been playing really well. They have to go out on the road to face this out-of-conference, bad record Nashville team. Doesn't look good to me for Pittsburgh, man. With New Jersey up in 2 days, that is a game Pittsburgh, I believe, is going to be focused on, even though I know Pittsburgh doesn't want to fall below 500. But again, I mean, I just think this is the spot. I know Nashville's coming off a game against the New York Rangers. They had some rest prior to that game. I think that win is actually just going to give them some confidence and some momentum moving forward coming into this, because when you're losing every game, you need some wins, man. And they were able to at least beat Dallas and New York in these games here. But the Rangers, I mean, they've been struggling so mightily that I actually don't think this puts Nashville in a letdown spot, because the Rangers are only sitting at 500 here. So I don't know if that win is actually really like such a big win that it would like make you overconfident and put you in a letdown spot. I don't even think you can have a letdown spot when you're playing bad hockey like this. And because of all the rest in there, I think Saros is probably going to be in net again in this one. So you're going to get your better goaltender in this one, most likely for Nashville as well. So I like the spot for Nashville. I like what the market is signaling as well, what the market is telling you. So give me that one as well, Nashville. Move on to the one college bowl game today, the R&L Carriers New Orleans Bowl. I think R&L Carriers has been the sponsor of this bowl for a long time now. And I don't know who they are. maybe they're a Louisiana, like local area business. I don't know who they are. I don't know if they're what are they? Are they like a delivery company? Like, what the hell are they? What do they carry? I have no idea. But this is Georgia Southern and Sam Houston. This is a weird game, man, because on the surface, I was looking at this game and thinking, well, I think Sam Houston probably is the right side in this game because they're the team that just moved up into FBS football, man. They were an FCS team for a while. They moved up into FBS in 2021, and I don't think they've been in a bowl yet. So I think that, like historically, I think they've technically won some bowls like way back in the 50s, 60s, whatever. But in the modern era, Sam Houston has not been in FBS football, and they have not won a bowl game. And I don't think they played in a bowl game yet. And they had to go through that transition period as well. So on the surface, to me, I'm like, well, Sam Houston is probably going to want to show up in this game. Like, they earned themselves a bowl spot, and they're playing for basically the first bowl win in program history. So that seems like it would be a decent spot. I mean, the geographic location doesn't seem bad to me for either team here. They get to play in a dome. They're both Southern teams, Georgia Southern, Sam Houston's in Texas, obviously. So, I mean, the spot, Houston is actually closer to New Orleans, I think, than Georgia Southern, right? Because Houston is like fairly close to the Louisiana border there. So Sam Houston might have their fans showing up for this game as well. For Georgia Southern, I mean, they've been in bowls in recent years. I think they've won at least one or two of those bowls recently. So to me, on the surface, it looked like Georgia Southern had a lot less to play for here in this game. But then I looked at all the opt-outs, and Sam Houston has a lot of guys opting out, including like one of their running backs who's been in the mix this year is actually opting out. So I don't like the look of that, man. Sam Houston has a lot of guys opting out, some guys on defense. And then I believe it's Bauer, I believe is one of their running backs. It might be Ducker, actually. So one of their running backs is going to be out for this game. Sam Houston, I mean, they're a team, they do like to run the football, and they got Watson, a quarterback. I do think he is playing in this game. It looks like I don't see him on the opt-out list, at least. So Watson, I mean, he is the guy that runs their offense. So it's not like their offense is going to be totally gone for this game. But I think losing one of their running backs isn't that great, although it looks like they have other running backs who can work their way into the mix. So they do have opt-outs on defense as well. So I don't know if it looks that great to me for Sam Houston, just because so many of these guys are opting out. But with Watson there and with the team maybe still motivated to try to get this game, it may still be the side that I would slightly lean to, but it's really not a strong lean. I'm not going to try to play this game. Georgia Southern, I mean, they had a decent season again in the Sun Belt. They did not make the Sun Belt final or anything like that. They were able to have a pretty decent season, though. And it looks like to me they do not have many players on the opt-out list, so it looks like they're going to show up and play in this game, which kind of makes sense. I mean, a lot of times when you have these smaller conference teams, even if they have been in some bowls recently, they still show up for some of these games. So, and it is a game on ESPN2 too. So, I mean, they get a nationally televised isolated game where it's the only college football game of the night on, and they just have to compete with an ugly NFL game, which I'm going to talk about in a second. So perhaps both teams are actually going to show up. Although, like I said, literally a lot of the players on Sam Houston look like they're not showing up here. The line has dropped from Georgia Southern 6 to 4.5. So I don't know what actually moved the line like that, because I see 76% of the cash coming in on the Georgia Southern side and 53% of tickets on Sam Houston. So it looks like Georgia Southern actually has the cash coming in on their side, even though the line has dropped down a bit. It was sitting at 5.5 for a while. Not a huge difference between 5.5, 4.5, but it's the way it is. Total's gone up from 46 to 48.5, 50% of tickets, 70% of the cash on the under. I'm not sure I would want to come in and try to play an over in this one, really, because I think both of these teams actually kind of run the ball more. I might be wrong about Georgia Southern. I know they've been like a rushing team in the past. They've had like dual threat quarterbacks in the past. So, I mean, it looks like that's still the case here, looking at their statistics. Not huge passing yardage from French, who has been their quarterback like all year. Who I think is playing in this game, but it looks like they do run the ball more as well. So I would probably lean to actually an under in this one if I was going to have to guess in this one. That's where more of the money is coming in. Yeah, I mean, as far as that's concerned, yeah, and I still kind of lean to Sam Houston getting points just because it would be a big win for their program. But with all those opt-outs, I can't do that, man. King Concerto, what's up, man? I do play poker, actually. I was a poker player online for like 2 years. when I was 21 and 22, basically right before. The problem was the government really started coming in and cracking down on the online poker. I was playing on Poker Stars. I made a little bit of money playing poker, and then I switched over to sports betting. I mean, I've played some poker like live as well. I was mostly on like the charity circuit kind of locally here for a little bit, like right after that point. I haven't done that for a while, though. I played some live games at, like casinos and stuff, but I don't do it very often anymore. And I play online like a little bit, but I've definitely switched to sports betting, obviously. But I play poker as well. I mean, Texas Hold'em for sure, but like some of the other styles as well. Deuce to 7 low ball. Raz was really good online because Raz is just such an ugly, boring game, and people just don't know how to play it. So you can just take advantage of the idiots online. If you're playing low enough stakes, that the idiots are gonna be playing there and just giving you some money. And then I do like Omaha high low as well. That's a solid game as well. So those are the best variations of poker there. All right, NFL. Before I get out of here and get ready to, I have to work, but I am going to be going to the Celtics game. So yeah, this NFL game that they're giving us here, man, I mean, it looks like both a good and bad game. And you'll see what I mean by that if you don't already know what I'm alluding to here. I mean, this is Broncos Chargers. So we know these teams are both fighting to get into the playoffs. So both teams are going to be motivated here. No limit deuce 7 single. I like deuce to 7 triple draw, but they're both pretty fun. All right. So Broncos Chargers. I mean, yeah, this is a big game, man. So it's a divisional matchup, divisional rivalry. Both teams are going to be fighting to get into the playoffs. So I expect a playoff type of atmosphere here, which is why I'm just going to throw it out there right away. I'm actually playing a total in this game. I'm going to play the under 41.5 in this game. I think it's going to go under, and I'll talk about it in a second. The total's down from 42 to 41.5. Juice to the under. So some money looks like it is coming in on the under, even though I see 57% of tickets, 70% of the cash on the over. I like the under in this one. And part of the reason is because I think this is going to be a playoff type of atmosphere. So I think you're going to see teams not really want to make mistakes here. If the Broncos win this game, I think they clinch a playoff spot. If the Chargers win, I think basically if they win and like Miami and one other team lose, they'll clinch a playoff spot. So both of these teams trying to get into the playoffs. It's a big game for all those reasons. It's Thursday, so a lot of times you see these Thursday games be a bit low scoring because the offense starts to struggle like early on. And I think we're getting misleading results coming from these teams, man. The last couple of games, Denver's offense has legitimately not been good in these last like few games, man. It's been all a mirage, especially in the Browns and Colts. I mean, they did put up a lot of offensive yardage in the game against the Browns, but I mean, at least the point totals that have been getting allowed here at the very least. So I think the Broncos defense actually looks worse than maybe it is as well. And like in this Browns game where they gave up 500 yards of offense to the Browns there. But I don't know, man, because there were mistakes all over the place. There were so many turnovers in both of these games against the Browns and the Colts. Turnovers leading to a bunch of points, and I don't think that's going to happen in this game. I think you're going to see both teams play this close to the vest, not want to turn the ball over in a game like this. This is a big game, so I think we're actually getting value on the under because these games have been wildly high scoring, and the Chargers coming off a very high scoring game themselves where I won on the game. I lost on the Colts. I played against both of these teams last week. Losing on the Colts, I'm bullshit because you had Jonathan Taylor dropping the touchdown right as he went into the end zone, which completely changed the dynamic of the game. And then Richardson, just ridiculous, whatever that was, that pick 6 play. I don't know what that was. And then I won on the Buccaneers. The Chargers, I thought were in a terrible spot there, and I expect a much better performance out of the Chargers this time. So I do also like the Chargers side in this game. I'll throw that out there before I finish talking about the total. Chargers down from 3 with juice to 2.5 with juice. 62% of tickets, 69% of the cash on the Broncos. So it looks like the Broncos are a little bit of a public underdog, but it does look like the money may be coming in on that side. But I don't think I agree with it, even though the Chargers did win at Denver. So it is one of those spots where, well, maybe Denver is the right side here because it's one of those second divisional matchups where the road team is an underdog and they actually lost the first game at home. So you do have that going for you. If you do like the Broncos side, that maybe for that one reason it does make sense, but everything else kind of would indicate to the Chargers for me, man. And the Chargers were 2.5 on the road earlier this season. So the odds makers are telling you the Chargers were the better team. they're telling you now that the teams are almost even, and I'm not sure I agree with that. I think maybe the Chargers are still the slightly better of these two teams. But the Chargers, yeah, they were 2.5 on the road, and now they're 2.5 at home. So it looks like, as far as line value is concerned, it looks like it has to be on the side of the Chargers in this game. And the Chargers, this score was actually misleading as well. Chargers are winning this game 23-0 in the fourth quarter, and they dominated this game, man, for the most part. And then Denver came in and kind of just put up some garbage time, and the Chargers took their foot off the gas, which also made it look higher scoring than it actually was. Total in this game was 37.5, and now we're looking at 41.5. So why is the line adjusted up? Well, I think it's just because we've seen these teams get involved in high-scoring games recently, and I don't buy it. So this game did go over the 37.5. It stayed under the 41.5, though. So, again, I mean, I think we may get somewhat of a similar style of game here where we get an under type of game here. I think that the Chargers were better in this game than what the final score may indicate. And we're looking at Denver. I mean, Denver was actually awful in last week's game, and they got outgained by the Browns by 100 yards 2 weeks ago. They got outgained by more than 100 yards against Indy, and it's been all turnovers, man. We know this. Like, I think Denver's opponents have thrown them 3 pick sixes in the last 2 games or something like that. It's just crazy how many of these turnovers are happening. And I just don't expect it to happen. This Denver offense is actually not that good, even though it looks like they might be because the points have been putting up. I really don't buy it. I don't think so. Bo Nix, I mean, his metrics really are not actually that good. People are talking about him being rookie of the year because I know the team keeps winning, but his stats are actually not very good, man, if you really dig into them. There are some metrics that put him he just hasn't been good. I mean, over these last few games, he has more interceptions than touchdowns. His yardage totals are not very good. So I think it's all a mirage, and that is kind of indicating to me on both the Chargers side and on the under here. The other reason I like the Chargers side, though, is because the Chargers are actually now behind the Broncos in standing. So I think that gives them a little bit of extra motivation here to try to get this game because the Chargers, I mean, they cannot lose this game and fall 2 games back of Denver, man, and have the tiebreaker basically split because the teams would be 1-1 against each other. Chargers need to pull back even with them and get the win to have the double the tiebreaker there and have the 2-0 record against Denver. So for that reason, I do like the Chargers as well. But again, back to the under. The under, I think, is the way to look, man, because like I said, I think Denver's offense has been a mirage. I really don't expect them to be putting up a whole lot of points here. The Chargers defense, even though I don't think they're that good, what the Chargers do is the Chargers run a really slow-paced possession offense. So they try to maintain possession as long as possible, try to keep their defense off the field and rested for as much as possible, which makes their defense look a little bit better than it is. But that's just the style of game that they play, man. They don't allow that many points because they slow the game down to a ridiculous degree with Harbaugh coaching them there. So that's what they do. The only issue is that the Chargers lost Dobbins, their main running back. So he's a big part of that, trying to maintain that possession. So he's out. So that's a little bit of an issue. And Justin Herbert looks like he's a little bit hurt again. So that does worry me a little bit as far as the maintaining possession, but it also means they're going to struggle on offense. So that doesn't really indicate against the under necessarily. It indicates maybe against the Chargers a little bit more than it does against the under. So I mean, I still am I like the under maybe even more, actually, if Dobbins is a little bit injured there, because it looks like the Chargers may struggle on offense a little bit more without him there, even though it doesn't mean they won't be able to maintain those long possessions as much, maybe. But the Chargers, I mean, the games that they've struggled the most on defense have been games against good offenses, and those good offenses, I mean, they've faced a lot of bad teams, but their defense has struggled against Cincinnati, Baltimore, and that was basically, and the Buccaneers. And those are basically the 3 best offenses they face this year. Are the Broncos as potent as that, even though it looks like they have been putting up high point totals? Yeah, but this Broncos offense is nowhere near that, man. And the Broncos offense is totally one-dimensional, too. If they even have a dimension. I mean, it all has to be Bo Nix because they can't run the ball. And I think McLaughlin is out now, and he's been their more explosive running back. So with him out, and the Chargers are good against the run defensively, it's easier to throw on the Chargers than it is to run. But if the Broncos can't run the ball at all for all those reasons, and you're going to know they're going to have to throw the ball, it makes it easier to defend against the throw as well. Nix, like I said, it's been kind of a mirage for him, man. He's not actually that good. So the matchup looks decent to me for the Chargers defense. for all those reasons. And of course, like I said, the Chargers struggled against good offenses, and the Broncos are not a good offense. So that's what we have going on there. Broncos, of course, the main reason why they're as good as they are is that their defense is good. Their defense has been causing a lot of turnovers, causing takeaways. But in this game, I don't know if we're going to see a lot of turnovers, man. So this is why I like the Chargers, and maybe why I like the under as well, is that I don't expect as many turnovers here, because the Chargers, they turn the ball over at one of the lowest rates in the NFL, man. So they hold on to the football. They protect the football. So that looks good for the Chargers against a ball-hawking Broncos defense here. A Broncos team that thrives off of turning the other team over, which has been what they've done the last couple of games. I don't think they're going to be able to do that against the Chargers team the way that they play. Remember, they hold on to the football a lot better than a lot of these other teams do. So there is that aspect of it as well, which also means that the Chargers might not be turning the ball over and handing the Broncos scores, because that's how the Broncos have been scoring recently. So again, that makes me lean to the Chargers slightly, but it makes me like the under a lot here, man. So I mean, 41 is a key number in NFL totals too, and we're getting under 41 in the hook here, the 41.5. I like it, man. I think it's going to be one of these ugly Thursday night games. I think it's going to be a playoff environment, which usually means the defenses show up. Could be a more defensive game. It usually means the offenses don't really want to screw this up. They start playing it close to the vest early on. All of that looks like an under to me. This looks like the recipe for an under. And if all of that's not enough, in the last 14 games that these two teams have played in LA, Broncos at the Chargers. So I guess it goes back to the San Diego days. So yeah, I mean, they are playing in a dome now, a roof stadium. So maybe because of that, maybe that means that the fast track could maybe help the offense a little bit more. But in all those games, the last 14 times the Broncos have played at the Chargers, it's gone 12-2 to the under. 12 of those games have gone under the total. So give me the under in that one. I'm actually playing a total in the NFL, and that's going to do it for me, man. So thanks for hanging out, guys. The plays one more time. In the NHL, Seattle minus 140 or whatever the best is you can get there. Nashville minus 140. And then in the NFL, Denver and the Chargers under 41.5. That's going to do it for me. Let's get back on the winning side, man, because I need to get back in the black to finish the year, man. So at least I don't have my second losing year ever. It's going to be really close to break even regardless of what happens, but I want to get it done. Let's get it done, man. We're picking and choosing some of these things on Thursday. Yes, sir. King Concerto, thanks for hanging out, man. Just out, thank you. Scott, thanks all you guys. And that's going to do it. I'm Tower Gang Toad. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter. Follow the Tower Gang Podcast, patreon.com/Tower Gang. You get bonus stuff, pre-show, post-show. Get to hang out with us in a Telegram. We had another crazy episode last night, although it was without Cole, who is on vacation. But go check that out if you missed the episode. It was fun as usual, man. I mean, you know what we do over there. Tax write-off. Is it? I don't know, because the taxes, if you play it like the actual like sports books, the taxes get taken out up front, and then if you play the offshore books, we won't talk about what happens with those. But I don't know. Can you write off gambling winnings? Maybe. I mean, I should know, but I mean, we've only had legalized gambling for like less than a year here, so I didn't have to really deal with it yet in taxes. But we'll see. Ducks have been turning it around. They beat Winnipeg last night. It could be a spot where you might want to look to go against the Ducks after that. Yeah, they got Trouba. I mean, the Ducks are still not a good team, though, so you're right. I mean, they could be in a letdown spot off of beating Winnipeg. I don't know when their next game is. That is something to look at. Urjo, thanks. Thanks again to all you guys, and let's have a good day, and go Celtics tonight. Peace out.